Well, Ben, thank you so much for coming on Lunch Therapy.
Oh my God, I am so excited to be here. I'm like such a fan of your content, Adam.
Oh, stop.
Your Instagram is like always inspiring me. Your Twitter
Oh,
is so funny. So like I'm like very, very excited to be here.
well, I mean, you're the superstar podcaster who has one of the top, if not the top podcast right now in the art section of Apple Podcasts. That's pretty incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. It's like we're not the top at the very moment, but like every now and then we sort of like get up there, and it's very, very surreal to me
Yes.
that our show, which is just basically commenting on stuff happening on Bravo, that would somehow, propel us to such great heights, but it has, and we're not complaining.
Of course, but I didn't realize because I've listened to it, but like I went and checked it out before you came on, and I didn't realize you guys do it every day, like 5 days a week. That is so much. Are you exhausted or is it still fun for you?
It's always still fun. Sometimes it can be exhausting because we record sometimes if we can do multiple episodes on the same day,
Mhm.
then we will do it that way, like if we have access to screeners or things like that. So on Mondays we actually wind up recording 3 episodes in a row, and
Wow.
it's really intense. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
as a podcaster, just to talk for an hour is hard.
Yeah. I
And
do
for
one
us,
a week and it's like, wow, how do I do this? I'm like a hero, but five a week, I can't
you
imagine.
are a hero. You
Yeah.
are.
But you're also not only are you recording podcasts though, you're keeping up on every Bravo show. That's the other part of it, right?
Yeah, almost every Bravo show. There are some that we just don't have the bandwidth for. So, like the $1 million listings, unfortunately, we just do not cover them.
Yeah.
We also had to cut loose some shows like Married to Medicine, and it's like we want to cover them all, but Bravo also just keeps churning out so much content, and eventually we just kind of have to, cry uncle and just pick the ones that we want to watch.
Well, I love hearing you guys do your impressions of all the housewives too. I mean, I'm an original like New York Housewives fan.
Yes.
I mean, Jill Zarin was my housewife that felt like I felt the most connected to because I was like, okay, she's like
Hmm.
a Jewish mother, like, and
Yeah.
funny enough, I found out later that she lives in Florida, like in the same community that my parents live in. So it's like very close to home. But then she was exiled from the Housewives lineup, and I was very upset
Yeah.
about that. How do you feel
Yeah.
about that?
I think it's time for Jill Zarin to come back. I really do.
I do
You know,
too.
she was beloved. Her first 2 seasons, people loved her. She was like a top ranked housewife overall. And then her feud with Bethany kind of exposed some of the darker sides of Jill Zarin, which I
Sure.
think at the time people were like, how craven, how awful. But now, we've had many years since then, and the dark sides of Jill Zarin really are not as terrible as some other dark sides we've seen on other housewives who've
Oh my
lasted a
God.
lot
I
longer.
find Bethany's dark side so much darker. I mean, I like Bethany and I admire her, but
Yes.
she goes so dark that she'll be like sobbing at the dinner table because someone like dropped a napkin on her lap or something. I mean, it's just like there's a
Yeah.
darkness there that goes beyond anything I've ever seen.
Yeah. And I would argue that in retrospect, we were all kind of like Team Bethany at the time because everyone loved Bethany. And like you said, I still really like Bethany. I think that
Mhm.
she is a challenging personality, but I think she's also kind of a gaping wound. And I think that's
Yeah.
good for reality TV.
Oh,
But
yeah.
in retrospect, Jill's whole thing was that her husband had cancer. R.I.P. Bobby. Her husband had cancer, and Bethany like sent an email, and that was it. And you know what? In retrospect, it's like that was a totally valid reason to be pissed at Bethany. I'm sorry, that was
Yeah.
a totally valid reason.
I have to say the darkest moment on that whole franchise to me was when it was Bobby's funeral and Jill
Mm,
came out to see Bethany on the street at her husband's funeral. She got like mic'd up to have like a
yeah,
reconciliation with Bethany. I found that extraordinarily dark. I don't know why.
it
Although Bobby
was
would have
dark.
approved, I think.
And I don't remember the exact quote, but I just seem to remember that like it seemed almost like Bethany was one-upping Jill in that moment. I
Yeah.
seem to remember there was some quote where I thought to myself, is Bethany really doing this at the funeral? This is very strange.
Well, we're going to give you a break from talking about housewives, but I had to cover some housewife ground before
That's
we
okay.
got.
I'll talk as much as you want. Like it's like now part of my instinct. It's like if you need me to talk housewives, I will talk housewives for hours.
Well, it is funny that I will say, and then we'll move on. But Craig was like, "Are there any Jewish housewives right now in New York?" And it's like Leah is converting to Judaism,
Yeah.
but otherwise, I don't think there are. And I find that crazy because I mean, New York, you have to have at least one Jewish housewife.
Yeah. Well, Real Housewives. I feel like when it started, and probably is still sort of true, is that every city was kind of like a stereotype,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or maybe not a stereotype. It was sort of like a group. So you had, blondes in Orange County. Atlanta is primarily Black. New York, Jewish, New Jersey, Italian. It was like very
Yeah.
on the nose. But you're right. New York has kind of moved away from it. Although I think this season with like Black Shabbat, I think
I missed that. I need to watch that. Okay, I
oh,
have to
Black
go back.
Shabbat, Black Shabbat got a lot of people really mad, but I think we're going to be talking about Black Shabbat for a very long time. Like Black Shabbat was just something where you're like, I cannot believe what I'm watching right here.
Really? Okay, I'll go back. I'll watch that. So
Yeah,
Ben,
be
when I
prepared.
first met you, I believe maybe I met you out in the world, but one of our first social gatherings together as friends was you brought me to a cookbook sale at the Hollywood Farmers Market. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, we totally did that. And we had brunch afterwards.
Yes, we did. And so I want to hear about, which I'm sure you're eager to talk about, your relationship to food and your history with it and how much you care about it, because it's not something maybe that comes up often on your podcast, as far as I know, but maybe people want to know about it.
Yeah, we actually do talk about food because Ronnie, my co-host, we both love to cook.
Okay.
But in terms of my history with food, I have a strange history with food in that as a child, I'm like, here comes the whole history.
Yeah, let's hear it.
As a child, I was a very picky eater, standard kid stuff, right? Hot dogs, yes. Vegetables, no.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere around like 5th or 6th grade, I started to explore more, started to incorporate shrimp, being open to shrimp, being open to salad. I remember salad was a big thing around 6th grade for me. I would like just douse it with Thousand Island.
And where did you grow up?
New York. Westchester, New York.
Okay, I'm from Long Island, so we're not too far.
Yeah,
okay,
across the sound.
Whatever. Yes.
The body of water.
Yeah.
So I think I had like a fairly standard relationship with food. And I just started to become more and more open to it through college. Be more like, I tried sushi for the first time freshman year, all these things. And then I moved to LA in 2001, and I was not much of a cook, but I still liked food. I don't know. I don't know where things really changed for me, like just loving restaurants, etc. But somehow over the years, during college, my parents also they love going to restaurants. So I was exposed to a lot of things when I was younger, sort of against my will. But as I got older, I was more down for it. But the turning point for me with food and cooking and for cookbooks, etc., was 2005. I was unemployed, and prior, like my going to the supermarket for me meant going to Costco with my roommate and loading up on the French bread pizza and the Kraft mac and cheese and Hot Pockets and hot dogs. And the two of us would go through all that food and over the course of 2 weeks or so.
Oh my God.
And then go back to Costco and do it again. And I was unemployed, and I was like, this is not, I feel like I've got to make my dollar, go farther than what I'm doing here. And I was like, I got to learn how to cook pasta. So I literally turned on the Food Network, and Giada DeLaurentis was on. I didn't even know who she was. She just was there, and she was cooking this pasta dish. And it happened to be an episode for like pasta for beginners. It was like perfect kids.
Wow. The universe was watching you. Yeah.
The universe, like Susie Fogelson was watching from above. And basically, so it was this pasta dish. So I was like, I am going to, teach myself. I'm going to make this dish. And so I made the dish, and that literally took me on the path of cooking. And that took me on the path of going to the internet to find recipes, to cook them, to try them. I still make that Giada recipe, by the way. It's very
what was
good.
It?
A very simple orecchiette with breadcrumbs, toasted breadcrumbs.
And like olive oil and garlic?
That is exactly right. In fact, I don't even think it calls for garlic. I think that is a Ben Mandelker edition. But it's literally, you just take like about 3/4 of a cup of olive oil, and then you add 2/3 a cup of breadcrumbs. You toast that, you cook it all, and the pasta, add the breadcrumbs in. She calls for prosciutto.
Okay.
Because it's like, you don't have to even cook it. You can just chop it up and throw it in there. I've actually found that I've tried different kind of meats. I have found that it works really well with pepperoni.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, because you
You're
don't think
bringing
of
it full circle back to the Hot Pocket. It's like Hot Pocket pasta. Yeah, there you
Yeah, it's an homage to the French bread pizza. But yeah, I feel like people don't really think about putting pepperoni in things. I think it's so associated with pizza
Uh-huh.
that you just sort of people go for fancier sausage. But I was like all I had one day. And
Yeah.
I found that if you sort of cook up the pepperoni in that olive oil before you add the breadcrumbs and then toss it all together, the sharpness and the pungency of that pepperoni is kind of amazing. And then just, Parmesan and parsley.
I feel
Very
like
simple and
you're a
delicious.
culinary innovator because it's funny. I don't think I've ever like I cook pasta constantly and I eat pasta constantly, and I don't think I've ever seen pepperoni in a pasta. But you're absolutely right. That makes a lot of sense. Why wouldn't you?
Let's make pepperoni the new anchovy, right?
Yes, let's do it. Well, Ben, this is a perfect segue because, as you may know, this podcast is ultimately about what you had for lunch today.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm now going to ask you, we'll kick off your therapy session. Ben Mandelker, what did you have for lunch?
Well, Adam, I think technically what I had for lunch was a pearl barley kind of salad. But today's one of those days where lunch is sort of on a spectrum of food.
Okay.
Wherein I went to a very late breakfast at around 11.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of was like eating and I came home and sort of like ate some. I was like, I want to get like an actual luncheon for this podcast.
Okay.
But it sort of was like felt like it was still part of like the breakfast, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that breakfast could have been your lunch, by the way. I mean, I'm not technical about it.
Yeah, I kind of figured you would say that, but I kind of was like, let me try to get sort of two meals, but now they're kind of an amalgamation. So I will say that the breakfast portion of the lunch was a breakfast quesadilla from Joey's Cafe in West Hollywood.
Okay.
And the lunch though was a pearl barley salad that I made from Bonnie Frumpkin's cookbook Kachka, which is
I love that book.
Yeah. So this pearl barley salad, I think it's called like perlovka. I apologize to the Russians in the audience. It's like a really simple salad that you can sort of make a big batch of and it'll last you through the week. And it's just like I like to eat it when I feel like I've taken in a lot of crap into my system.
Mm-hmm.
And also I just like to eat it because with the podcasting schedule that we talked about, like a lot of times if I don't have a pre-made lunch ready to go, then literally the entire week falls into disaster with the eating. And so it's almost like I need to have that lunch there, something like a pearl barley salad to kind of right the ship for my cooking.
And what goes into the pearl barley salad?
So you got the pearl barley, first of all, which
I'm that
part. So it calls for, you basically make, it's almost like a Russian pesto. It's supposed to be sorrel.
Okay.
Sorrel,
I think.
Sorrel, yeah. I never find sorrel. And so she suggests spinach with a squeeze of lemon. So that's what I do. Hazelnuts, although this time I actually used almonds because I couldn't find hazelnuts. Hazelnuts are oddly tricky to find sometimes.
And they're expensive. They do have them at Cookbook in Echo Park, but they're like $15 a bag. So
yeah, you just never know when you're going to find them. And by the way, pro tip for the audience, sometimes hazelnuts are called filberts, which I think is adorable and strange.
That's so cute.
It is really cute. But sometimes if you're like, where are I can't find the hazelnuts, but if you see something called filberts, those are hazelnuts.
That is a hazelnut. Okay. Hazelnuts are one of those nuts that truly transforms when you toast them. I find like
100%.
A toasted hazelnut almost tastes like a cookie, whereas like a not toasted hazelnut just tastes kind of fine, like a little buttery, but like not anything to it.
It's true. Like it's one of those examples where when cookbook authors, such as yourself, say things like you must toast the nut, the hazelnut, you should. So this one I used almonds, spinach with some lemon, pretty much like an entire head of dill, I believe, a bundle. And then I'm just trying to think. And then you add in, I think there's some white wine vinegar.
Wow.
And you just basically just put it in the food processor. It becomes this like vibrant electric green, which is always exciting. Like that's one of my favorite things when you get that bright green in the food processor.
You mean the spinach and the nuts, but not the pearl barley. You don't put that in.
No.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
The pearl barley is cooking at this point.
So you're making a pesto with all those things you just
You're
said.
kind of doing it. Yeah.
Is there cheese in there?
There's no cheese. It's actually vegan. You can make this as a vegan recipe.
Okay.
Yeah. So while the pearl barley is cooking, which goes for about, she says 30 minutes, but I always feel like it takes like 10 more because there's always a lot of liquid. You then so you make this, you whir up this sauce and you taste it, and it is, oh, of course, Garlic.
Garlic.
Of course, there's
yeah.
garlic.
I knew I needed something. Okay.
Yeah, I needed something. I don't remember how much garlic. I don't remember if it's just a clove. I think it's just a clove because it's all raw. And it's like when you get it right and add salt and pepper, and it is like intoxicating, this pesto. It
Wow.
doesn't taste like an Italian pesto. It's just so fresh and tangy and garlicky. It is like wonderful. And you just toss it with the pearl barley. And actually what the recipe calls for is you then add some chopped hazelnuts into this mixture. You also add, you cook up some mushrooms and you put the mushrooms in there too, and also some sliced pear or chopped up pear. But this time I decided just to keep it just pearl barley. I didn't want all the add-ins, just keep it simple.
And you did that all today, right before this podcast? Like
No. I made it. I actually made it about a week ago.
Oh, okay.
And so I've just been sort of like going through it very slowly.
Grazing on it. Yeah.
Yeah. It just takes about 45 minutes to an hour to do it. You'll add a little bit of time if you decide to do the mushroom preparation, but it's very simple. And it just makes you feel, I feel like when I have it in the middle of the day, I feel like I'm being good to myself because I'm so bad to myself with so many other meals that I have.
Well, that's what was interesting. So like in terms of the lunch therapy of it all, what I latched onto was when you said you made it because of all the crap you put into your system is to undo it. And I couldn't help but draw the connection between Watch What Crappens,
yes,
and putting, Bravo shows into your system. and then
it's a strong correlation.
Yeah. And I wondered like if you need to cleanse yourself after watching a bunch of Housewives. Like, do you feel that way about what you're watching too? Or does it apply to like other elements of your life?
I actually don't have any, I don't feel like when I watch these shows that I'm like ingesting crap necessarily. Okay. I actually am like very proud of the shows. I'll of course will joke like, oh my God, the stuff that I have to watch. But
it's the name of your podcast is Watch What Crappens. So I'm not coming out of nowhere with this. Yeah.
No. You're right. No, it's because it is a whole bunch of crap, right? But I'm not, as realistically speaking, I actually love these shows more than sort of the podcast name might imply. But there is something about like spending several hours being really like kind of making catty jokes about these shows. And then you go from that to then you're exhausted. And if you haven't made lunch for yourself, then you might be ordering McDonald's, or there's something about like the process of like just watching so much TV and then going on and on about so much TV. And then you eat some McDonald's that you kind of feel like, what sort of human am I?
Yeah. Well, I thought that was so fascinating about that idea of like feeding yourself a bunch of crap. And even in your story earlier about the hot pockets and then seeing Giada DeLaurentis come out of the shadows and, with a shining light on her, like leading you down the path towards pasta. And then this idea of like fresh ingredients and this fresh pesto after like, whatever else you might be eating. So I think there's something in there about this dichotomy, and not to get too personal in this therapy session though, but between like virtue and like, I guess like hedonism or whatever the other part of it is. It's like that these two elements are kind of within you, both sides are battling it out.
100%. It is 100% because I have a vision of how I would aspire to be, and actually, I mean, this is not to blow any smoke up your butt.
I can use all the self-esteem you can get.
No, but like I'm very much like, I see your Instagram stories and you're always cooking these lovely things, and I know Instagram is a curated portion of all our lives, but you're always putting together this like effortless pasta of some sort. You've just gone to the farmer's market, and I said, and it's actually kind of like a lifestyle that I aspire to. And I do take part of that. I go to the farmer's market and I do cook a lot and everything. But when I see it in other people, it's like, I don't know. I feel like I'm like, yes. It's like, I like, there's something about that lifestyle that I really, really enjoy, because I feel like it's a lifestyle of treating yourself properly and sort of luxury and refinement, which why I want those things, I'm not sure. But so for instance, I will often have like just a loaf of bread from Tortina Round,
that's great. or that's luxury and refinement to
that's
me.
Extreme luxury, right?
Yeah.
And I will, because I have a Tortina that's right close to me, and so I will often order like an avocado toast like once a week. And I think that eating food is sometimes more than just how it tastes. Sometimes it's the experience it gives you and makes you feel. And I love a McDonald's experience. I feel like, especially at those times when you need a McDonald's and you get a McDonald's, it is glorious and wonderful. But like I don't know, maybe in this year, especially where we've just been kind of cloistered away in our homes, to have something that feels a little bit more worldly or more cosmopolitan or pretentious. I don't know. You could call it whatever you want. It somehow takes you out of transports you out of the confines of where you are.
Well, there's
Perhaps.
something aspirational in that, which also makes me think of Housewives, because there's like
Yes.
that aspirational, like you're watching these people on like boats in the Hamptons and going all around the world, and it's sort of, but the Housewives reveals, and I agree with you that I actually do think it's a pretty great show, especially, not to get too deep here, but I feel like it's like a mirror of like the darker parts of America altogether. I feel like Erica Girardi right now, like the crimes that she and Tom committed, like that speaks to like a huge part of what's wrong with our country right now. So I do actually think that's important. But where was I going with this? Oh, but I think in terms of the aspiration, I think what the Housewives reveals is that behind all the glamour and the beauty is a real darkness that we talked about earlier, and that's the same with my Instagram, is what I'm trying to say. As much as you see me making a salad, you don't see me sobbing in the corner afterwards, like saying this is all I have. So I'm
looking forward to that story. That'll be exciting.
But no, I hear what you're saying. I mean, actually, one thing that it made me think of, and I'm curious to hear you talk about this, was like your work ethic, because we talked about you doing 5 episodes a week, and how, and I as someone who does 1 a week, I know that that's a lot of work, and I'm sure you're doing lots of other things too. And so I wonder, like, if there's a connection between not wanting to take the time to make yourself like a luxurious lunch every day and the sense of needing to work, and like that you're not using your time well. Because I certainly struggle with that. Like for me, I have this weird Venn diagram where actually making the salad and putting it on my Instagram counts as work, because it's like continuing, quote unquote, the brand. And so it's like, okay, if I'm going to write cookbooks and I'm going to do all these things, like it's not a bad idea for me to take the time to make like something beautiful and take a picture of it. But I imagine if you're doing a podcast about Bravo or whatever you're doing, screenwriting or whatever, it's like probably less purposeful to take the time to make a meal like that.
Yeah, it's really hard to balance, making those nice meals with a rigorous schedule. And it's obviously that's for anyone who's working, 5 days a week, 6 days a week. I mean, we're doing five episodes a week, but we're still not putting in the work days that of, people who are like really going to offices or reporting to places that are hours and hours. So like, don't get me wrong. I'm not being like, oh my goodness, my workload. But I think that for anyone who is like working heavily, I think that I almost feel like there's a correlation between you're sort of like quote unquote in the mines, and then you come out of it and you almost want to sort of treat yourself right. You want to have something that's like lovely, and sometimes something that's delicate. Sometimes you want something hearty, and you do want that soul, like something that hugs your soul. Yeah. But for me, I think it's just that when I like stop podcasting and I'm like shutting out the world, I kind of want to do something that feels, I don't know, a little bit more like delicate and artful, I guess. Yeah, I get that. I don't know. And I don't know if I never really thought about if that is a reaction to spending so much time, cracking jokes about reality TV. That's something I'm like pull back and go in another direction that's like more delicate. I don't know.
Now remind me, are you in a relationship, or
I am?
You're in a relationship. Yeah, I think I knew that. But because one of the big things for me is cooking for somebody else versus cooking for just myself. Because when Craig goes out of town, I find my cooking completely changes, and then I'm very likely to like do like what Giada did and like just boil up some pasta and put some breadcrumbs on, or just like do things that are a little less involved. But when Craig is here, I feel like more of a performance. Like, okay, like even for lunch today, like, he was like, I was going to make like a tomato salad. He's like, I want a panzanella. So I went out and got like a sourdough. He's a spoiled brat. But anyway, it's like exciting to cook for someone who appreciates it. So I'm curious, in your relationship, how does cooking play into that?
It's like almost exactly as you described. In that I love cooking for my boyfriend. I don't know why. I don't know what happiness it gives. It makes me so happy to see him happy when he eats the food. And it's really fun. Like last night I made a pork chop and I I made a pork chop and a salad and a corn salad and
Just one pork chop? Or you made 2 pork chops?
Well, I made 2 pork chops.
Okay.
Well, pork chop for each of us, I should say.
I was gonna say that's like only 1 pork chop for 2 people.
I ate nothing. I sat in the corner and I watched.
Okay.
No, but a pork chop for each of us and roasted some potatoes. And like I could have just like put it all onto a plate, but instead I put each one into a beautiful bowl.
Aww.
And it sort of looks just like nice. It's just fun. It's fun for me to have these experiences. It's like a miniature dinner party. But it makes me so happy when he likes the food that I make.
Yeah.
And when he's out of town, I find that what happens is I actually still I still cook. I'll still whip up a nice meal. Maybe not always quite as nice, but then again, there's a lot of food he's not interested in. He's not a big seafood eater. He's not a big he can't really have dairy. Okay. So I'll like lean into the fish. I'll lean into the dairy a little bit more when he's not there.
Got it. That's interesting. I do a lot of like spicier foods when Craig's not here.
Same.
It just upsets his stomach a little bit. But we're getting off topic. But I'm curious, like when you grew up, did you grow up in a family where there was a lot of cooking at home, or was it mostly eating out?
It was a mixture of both. My mom would cook a lot. But we definitely went to restaurants. Like we definitely we had one restaurant we went to every, I think, Friday night. We had our Chinese restaurant, we had, things like that. But my mom would cook. My mom's a good cook, and she doesn't cook as much anymore, but she really, really enjoys cooking. And it's been great because as I've gotten older, as I have gotten into cooking, now I can, talk about recipes with my mom and learn her recipes. But there was a lot of food, I think, growing up. I feel like I understand, like, man, I don't understand how parents have to cook for their kids so many nights a week. Man, that is hard. And so now I understand why my mom, like, there were a lot of nights where just like it was frozen peas and a baked potato and fish sticks, just something you can just like get onto the table,
That's like Craig is like, I'm angry that my mom never roasted the broccoli, because like when I roasted broccoli for him the first time, it was like a revelation, and he's sort of like, I can't believe how good this tastes, because my mom would buy frozen broccoli. I was like, well, give me a break. I mean, she was working, she had 3 kids to raise, so but
also roasting broccoli and Brussels sprouts and things like that, where it just wasn't a thing you did.
Right.
I feel like that only started like 10 or 15 years ago.
Ina Garten,
Was it Ina who really started that?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I mean, that's
wow.
My most popular post on my blog of all time was called "The Best Broccoli of Your Life," and it was basically because I made Ina's broccoli, and it went viral. But I felt bad because it was her recipe, but on my blog. But I for a long time, not to toot my own horn, but I had the top result when you Googled broccoli recipe from about 2009 to 2012. So those were some big years for me.
Yeah, I mean, I remember Brussels sprouts. When did I have like my first crispy roasted Brussels sprout? I actually feel like it was around 2010 or 11.
Oh yeah,
so.
Now they're everywhere. Yeah,
everywhere. But it was at a restaurant called Clio. Do you remember Clio?
Mm-mm.
It was like a modern Middle Eastern in Hollywood, and they had grilled Brussels sprout or roasted Brussels sprouts, and I was like, what is this amazing thing? I always thought Brussels sprouts were terrible, and of course now everyone has them everywhere. I mean, Brussels sprouts went from being literally the poster child for the terrible foods that you have as a child to now the thing that everyone loves.
So let's talk more about the picky eater part of your childhood.
Yeah.
Because what do you think was going on there? Do you think that was about control? Like you wanted to control what was going into your system? Because I feel like all the Freudian psychology is all about, breast milk and like oral personalities and all that stuff. But like, what do you think was going on for you during that period?
I think it must have been some sort of control. I have to imagine it somehow is tied into being a closeted little gay boy. But then again, at the same time, it's not like there are a lot of children are picky and they're not necessarily gay. But I just have found through my own therapy that like everything seems to come down to the fact that I was a closeted boy.
Yeah.
So
that's was like my therapy too. Like my therapy sessions are always about my coming out, and to the point where like I'll tell Craig like I had the most incredible therapy session. He's like, oh, was it about how you came out? I'm like, yeah, basically, yeah.
Everything is like everything is about me being in danger, and like the triggers of danger that I felt as a child and how they basically just manifest to like this day.
Really?
But well,
That's
just like
really interesting.
everything.
Yeah.
Well, danger, just danger sounds very serious, but it's like something as simple as if someone posts something on Instagram and it makes me annoyed. The real reason why I'm annoyed is because I feel like I feel like I can't trust that person. And if I can't trust them, that's a dangerous thing for me, because
Mhm.
being a closeted gay boy, you have like, if someone you don't trust, maybe someone who may expose you, like everything just goes down that line.
Wow. Okay, that's fascinating. Yeah, I mean,
So
I feel exposed and in danger whenever Craig wants to show affection on the street. Like
yeah,
that's where I feel the most vulnerable, because I feel like, oh God, somebody's gonna like beat me up or something. You know, that's
yes,
still like a remnant from
that's
those.
like actual physical danger. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're talking more about psychological
I'm just
danger.
like in psychological danger at all times. And so I don't know, I really don't know what was what psychologically was going on. And I still have a little bit of the one thing I have never been able to rid myself of from childhood is that I have an extreme hatred for berries and stone fruit. And yes, and in fact,
Wow.
it's a real problem, because I have rebranded myself as a foodie, and yet there's an entire category that I really can't even involve myself with. Like
Well, this
I
is great for today's session, because I feel like we can do some deep therapy here and get you to unlock what it's about.
I know I've tried. Let me, do you know how much I want to eat strawberries and how much I want to eat blueberries? And people putting peaches and things like your salad today, like
Yeah.
your beautiful peach panzanella, I would never be able to eat that because I hate peaches.
Okay, let's go
And
back, but we have to go like do that thing Citizen Kane, like
okay,
the
go back to
sled,
the
like we're gonna like transition, cross dissolve back to your childhood. And what is
yes.
your first memory of a peach or a stone fruit or a berry?
I don't know. So I don't have a distinct memory of a peach. I have a memory of like a blackberry. I seem to remember as like a child going berry picking in the neighborhood, and I do remember a blackberry.
Okay.
And I don't seem to remember it being a positive or negative thing, but it just was a thing. But I do remember, like, I don't know when I sort of solidified my hatred of berries, but it was early on, because I do remember being at a friend's house, and I was served strawberry ice cream, and I was like, I cannot have this. I can't. And that was like first grade.
Now it makes me wonder, like, okay, like in terms of other fruits that circle the berries and circle, like, okay, like you can eat a pear, you could eat
I could do a pear.
apple.
Yeah, I will tell you, this is my whole thing, because a lot of people are fascinated by this aspect of
Yes.
my palate, and so I can tell you everything. So pretty much all berries I hate, although I'm okay with cranberry. Cranberry's okay. And I'm okay with what's the from Costco, not Costco, IKEA, the
Lingonberry.
lingonberry.
Yeah.
I recently explored lingonberry
Okay.
from because of a recipe from another recipe from Kachka.
Okay.
And I liked lingonberry, at least in that syrupy form.
And those are very tart berries, cranberries.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe like very tart.
I think so. Because there's something about raspberries are my all-time least favorite. Like,
Oh my
I
God, that's one of my
absolutely
most
despise.
favorite. Okay.
Everyone loves raspberries. I despise it. Like, it's like a nightmare. I have a distinct memory of being in college and going to the Delta 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 sorority, and they had put out a spread, and I bit into a nice chocolate brownie and found out to my horror that it was a raspberry chocolate brownie, and I was like, ah! But so really almost all the berries are out. I'm okay with cherry, which is not a berry, but it's sort of berry adjacent. I love apple, pear, banana. I actually really love mango, which is odd considering I don't really like peach or nectarine or apricot.
All right, yeah, you're like breaking my brain here, but I guess like the only thing I could think is that like a very fragrant peach and a very fragrant like strawberry are almost like floral, like they give off like floral notes, and maybe that's what you don't like.
Yeah. Well, I often think to myself, do I not like the way these things taste? Or do I not like them because I always told myself I don't like them?
I think it's
which is
the
its
latter.
subtlety.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
it's got to be the latter, obviously, right? Because if I taste strawberry, am I having a negative reaction because the actual flavor, or is it because something is triggering me? Like, oh, as a child, when I taste this flavor, I didn't like it. So I've now received this trigger, and so therefore I'm going to have this emotional reaction. And intellectually, I know that's what it is.
Yeah.
And I aspire to push through that. But every time I think, this would be a good time to push through that, I also think, yeah, but I'm having such a nice meal. I don't know, like, why would I want to like have a strawberry experimentation right now?
Well, it's funny because like I relate to that in terms of things like tripe, which a lot of food
Mhm.
writers are like, oh, tripe is, I mean, Anthony Bourdain would be like, I love a good bowl of steaming tripe, and it's
Mhm.
like, it's the belly and it's the intestines or whatever. And so like, I went to France with Craig and we went to this restaurant that served, it was like a mixture of calamari and tripe. So it was like
Mhm.
rubbery, tubey things.
Yes.
And I remember just not being able to like let go of whatever preconceived notions I had about what I was eating and just getting incredibly nauseous. Like I put it in my mouth. I was like, whoa.
Wow.
And to your point of like how much of that was me thinking about what I was eating and just being conscious of what it was versus just genuinely not liking it. And to compare that to another thing, which Craig and I argue about all the time, is roller coasters, which is that
Mhm.
I don't like roller coasters. But as a child, my mom used to freak me out about them because she would say, you don't have to go on this. Or if you go, it was like a little kids amusement park. She's like, if you don't like it, we'll stop the ride. So of course, like you can have like
We'll
home
stop the
video of
ride.
me. Yeah, it's like me on this little tiny little roller coaster. I'm like, stop the ride, stop the ride. And so it's like now we'll go to like Disney World or Disneyland. And it's like I'm terrified to go on like, the one in California Adventure, but like I see like 5-year-olds going on it. So I think so
Yeah.
sometimes these things that are embedded in us in childhood are very difficult to like unlock and
Yeah.
get
And
over.
it's like, and you actually know what the source is, why it's happening,
Yeah.
and yet you're powerless to it. And I will say I have had some berry breakthroughs.
Okay.
First of all, I do have a thing where if I'm in a really fancy restaurant, a Michelin starred restaurant, and they serve me something that has berry in it, I will I will say I will do this. There was a restaurant here in Hollywood that sadly closed, and it was so great, called In Anne. And
Okay.
it was a Japanese restaurant, and we had this amazing meal, multi-course, multi-hour meal. And at one point they served something with some sort of peach in it, and I was like, oh, it's peach. But I said, you know what, like, this is such an excellent restaurant that I believe that even this thing that I hate will be good.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ate it, and it was delicious. And I've had that
Mm.
experience. I also went to a blogger thing once. It was a cocktail. It was a cocktail tasting of some sort, and all the cocktails were like berry based. And so I couldn't just be there in this group of like 6 people and be like, oh, sorry, I can't have that. So, and then it became a thing. Everyone knew I hated berries, so everyone was cheering me on. And I tried all these beverages, and they were fine. And so I was sort of hoping with these moments that I would sort of have that, those would be breakthroughs where I could start having some of these flavors. And it hasn't quite happened, but I feel like maybe I should just really work at it, and maybe I'll become used to some of these things.
Well, it makes me think about you saying the stuff you talk about in therapy about trust and safety. And I thought what was so interesting about the Japanese restaurant was that you felt like you were in good hands.
Ooh.
Like you felt like
Whoa,
you could
yes.
trust the chef. Like this is a
Yeah.
chef I can trust. And it's
Mhm.
amazing to me that because you trusted the chef, it tasted good. And that's something. I don't know what that means.
No,
But
I think that's actually a really fascinating thing. I don't know what it means either, but I think it can't. I think there has to be something about that, about the sense of trust and security in a space like that. But if I went to your place
mhm.
and you served for dinner a big strawberry shortcake,
Yeah.
I would trust you, and
Yeah.
I also probably wouldn't have the strawberry shortcake.
Oh, really?
So
You would deny the dessert that I spent hours and hours. That's only happened to me once in my like 15 years of cooking, where I've had a dinner party and I made a dessert and somebody's like, I'm sorry, I don't eat dessert. And I was like,
oh, see,
excuse me.
now actually, I probably wouldn't. Now that you said that, I'd be like, oh, I can't be number 2. Now that
No. But if you had told me, I usually ask people come over, like, is there anything you don't eat? And they'll tell me, and it's fine. Like if you said berries, stone fruit, no problem. But this person was like on a diet, and that really annoyed me. It's
oh,
like,
that's annoying.
yeah, it's like, give me a break. Like just eat the
Yeah.
dessert. I cooked for hours.
You know where I think that there is a through line though? I talk about how being at a blogger thing, and I ate it because people had their eyes on me. And I talk about how I see myself as a foodie, but there's this whole category that I can't really partake in, and I feel this pressure to sort of push through and teach myself how to like enjoy these flavors. And I also talk about watching all this reality TV and then wanting to do something that makes me feel more elegant and elevated. And I wonder what the connection is between eating, the connection in my life between food and persona, and personas that I want to have, and how that traces back actually to being a closeted gay boy who was chasing a persona of acceptance. Because my whole thing is, I was the best little boy in the world persona. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Oh yeah, I was that too. Yeah, the golden child. Yeah,
golden child, which is that you always want to be wonderful and great, and you want to smooth over every situation, so that way you actually become invisible. You're not an outlier, and no one has to pay attention to you. And sort of funny that having weird food issues would actually make you an outlier. But here, talking about wanting to have this persona or that persona be seen as a foodie, it's like somehow a desire to have a persona or to aspire towards something is maybe my way of reaching for safety.
Yeah, I think that's good. Wow, you're your own lunch therapist. I don't think we need me anymore. That's really good. That makes a lot of sense.
No, I need you.
Well, I mean, it makes me wonder when you watched Giada that first time and she inspired you to make that pasta dish. How long did it take for you to start to trust yourself in the kitchen? Because I think that's a hard thing. I mean, I certainly struggled with that at the beginning because I didn't know anything about cooking. So, I mean, I would make all kinds of mistakes and doubt myself. But I'm curious for you, as somebody who had safety issues or didn't feel safe all the time. How did that go for you?
I think it took a while. I think in some ways I still don't, because I very much still rely on recipes. First of all, I really enjoy recipes, but if I'm in the kitchen to this day and I'm following a recipe, I go back and I look at the step 5 times in a row. Like, did I get that? Teaspoon? Wait, it was a teaspoon? It was a teaspoon, right? Teaspoon? And like I go back and I rarely actually make dishes on my own with like just untethered, like here's this ingredient, here's that ingredient. And that's actually another aspirational thing. I want to be someone who sees stuff and just wants to throw them together. And I've started to be like that. I've started to do something like that that's risky. And I think the reason why that's scary is because if I make something bad, that actually goes counter to being the best little boy in the world, right? That's a failure.
Right. So this way, I think that's very common, because then people can blame the recipe. Like, oh, this recipe just didn't work out. It's too salty. And it's so funny because I'm working on a cookbook now, and my instinct is to be like, salt it till it tastes good, and add enough honey till you like it. But I think most people just want to be told 1 teaspoon salt, 1 tablespoon honey. So that's
funny. And I've been breaking out. I think the pandemic has been good for that. For me, kind of just like trusting and doing it. Or sometimes if I make a recipe a lot, like the Giada one, I start to experiment more with it and start to play around with it, because it's almost like the first time I do a recipe, I want to do it exactly like they say, as like my control, and then I go from there. So in terms of like when I started to trust myself, I'm trying to think, probably around if I started cooking in 2005, I think I started to really cook around 2008 or 9. That's when I started living on my own. And then at that point, in 2005, I was unemployed, and then I was employed again. But then in 2009 or 10, I was really unemployed, and like more so than before.
Yeah.
And so I started, that's actually around when I started getting cookbooks, because I started wanting to eat the foods at restaurants that I really shouldn't be going to those restaurants for. So I wanted to learn how to cook them. And I started to find that internet recipes where you never knew what you got. So I started to go to the authority of a cookbook. If you find a cookbook author you like, then, you can just go with that rather than like this recipe from Epicurious and that one.
What were the cookbooks that you gravitated to the most in that period?
Barefoot Contessa, of course.
Of course. Yeah, she's very reliable. She tests those things to death.
She does. Yeah. She really does. And she even says, I think, that she is a recipe person too. Like she follows recipes. I think so at that time, so Barefoot Contessa, I was doing that. I was using hers. To this day, I still use them a lot. I also around then got Mauder Jaffrey's her her seminal cookbook. I forget what it's called. It's like Indian cooking, something very basic, which was great. Rick Bayless, Mexican every day. I really enjoyed. These were all like in this mix of like 2010 to 2013. I don't really remember, but those were some of my seminal cookbooks of that time. Your friend David Leibovitz, The Perfect Scoop.
He's a lunch therapy alumni. He was on an early episode of this where I analyzed this much. It's funny. Like he wrote me an email when I started my blog in 2004 because I was getting some popularity. And he was like, "Hi, my name is David, and I have a blog too." And I was, it's like, and I remember I Googled him. I was like, "Oh my God, he's like a cookbook," and we became friends because we were both like coming up at the same time. And now he's like obviously like
I name dropped you to him.
Oh, you did?
I went to he had like a talk in Pasadena a few years ago, and I went to it, and I was like, "Oh, I know Adam Roberts."
Wow. He was like, "Oh God, yeah, get out of here." Well, that's funny. I mean, so I was gonna ask. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, in terms of like trusting myself in the kitchen, I know there was definitely a period in those first few years where if a recipe said brown this until it's crispy, I was like, what does that mean? Like, is this crispy? Is this crispy? And I had a roommate. I was constantly going to him. I was like, do you think this is crispy?
Right.
Do you think this is well done? There's actually a lot of abstract things, or sort of like nebulous concepts that a lot of recipes don't realize they are conveying. A pinch of salt could mean anything, right? Or cook it till it's crispy and cooked through or something. There's certain
golden brown.
Golden brown. My nemesis is like, is this golden brown? Is this just brown? Is this light gold? Like, what is golden brown?
Every recipe I've ever written. Like, keep going.
But like, I was always very nervous about that. I do it just right. And then eventually, I think around 2010 was when I just was like, that's good enough. That's fine. Even if it's not like as dark as it needs to be, or it's too dark. It's fine.
Well, it's like Malcolm Gladwell thing of like 10,000 hours. Like, I feel like, that thing where he's like, you become an expert at something when you've done it for 10,000 hours and whatever that is, like playing the guitar or whatever. And I think with cooking, it's like that. It's like, you can't know like what's good when you start. You have to just keep doing it and screw up and mess up. I mean, to this day, like I've like cooked a meal where like I'll over salt the pasta water. And it's just like, I'll serve the dinner. Everyone's like, "Oh, this is delicious." And it's like, I know that it's too salty, but it's sometimes you just screw up and now like the next time I make pasta, I'll just use a little less salt, but you have to mess up and have to just keep going and going.
And I think that's hard. I think it's hard for people like us who we are to golden children. To mess up is a hard thing to do. And actually, especially back then when, to mess up also meant you wasted ingredients, and no one wants to waste ingredients, but especially when you're unemployed, you don't want to do that. But yeah, there's the Passover this year. I decided to make an impromptu meal for my boyfriend and I made truly the worst matzo ball soup I've ever made. Like it, like,
why was it so bad? That's hard to screw up.
It was, I sort of made like a last minute, I didn't have any chicken stock, but I had some chickeny things around. So I made like a last minute stock. And it wasn't chickeny enough. So then I thought, why don't I be a little crazy? And I took a little bit of chicken and I kind of pureed it in.
Oh no.
I thought I thought that might skip. Well, at first it actually tasted okay. But what happened was the protein and the gelatin in that started to slowly thicken the matzo ball soup over time. And like by the time it's time to serve the soup, it was like gloppy. And I was like, it was like,
wait, you blended like chicken meat into the soup?
Yes. I was like, I'm gonna experiment.
I'm proud of you for experimenting and for trusting yourself, but maybe you shouldn't have trusted yourself.
It went so wrong. And then the chicken I made was, I don't know. I don't even remember. It was unremarkable. Either it was like half cooked or not cooked. I don't know. Did I even make chicken? I don't know. The soup really traumatized me.
The best one I ever made, I think, was just like, Ina. I mean, talk about privilege and housewifey antics. Like, do you know how many chickens she puts in her chicken broth?
She puts 3.
Yes, 3 whole chickens to make chicken stock. And then she and I think in the recipe, she's like, discard them. Like, you basically like boil 3 chickens and then throw them away. So you have a pot of broth. I mean, that's insane. The one I like to do, I think it's been a while since I've made chicken stock or like chicken soup, but it's like a double soup. So you buy store-bought stock, but then you put a whole chicken in that. And then you cook that with like root vegetables and celery and onion. And so it gets it really, really golden and dark. And you don't have to waste 3 chickens.
Yeah, Ina's stock is Actually, it's I do use her kind of like foundation for a stock. Like
Yeah.
I use it sort of almost like a checklist. Like, oh yeah, I should throw in some. Let's see, what does she have? She has carrots, she has parsnip. Okay, I'll throw that in. But
Yeah.
I don't really follow the proportions. I just sort of throw in
Yeah.
what I either have or what looks good. And this is the growth that I have, is that I do feel like I can just sort of do that and it's okay. And actually something I talk about with my therapist a lot, which you touched on, and you use this word, is authority. And
Uh-huh.
how like if I don't feel like I have authority in something, I tend to shy away from it until I
Mm-hmm.
do have the authority. Like there's some people
Right.
who like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I don't care. I'm just going to blaze forward.
Right.
But if I don't feel like I've got the authority, then it's like, I get, but now I do feel like I have authority with cooking. And
Great.
so I feel safe in just saying, this will be good enough for the stock.
I love that. And I think confidence makes for a great cook. I think like that is what a good cook knows, how they want something to taste, and they make
Yeah.
something taste that way. And I think that sounds like you, but I also share that with you, that like I don't want to put myself out there in any way unless I know that I'm going to be good at it. So I totally get
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're not at the end yet, but every podcast begins with what did you have for lunch, but it ends with what are you having for dinner tonight?
Tonight I'm going out. So last night I made the pork chops.
Yes.
I've been cooking a lot over the past 5 or 6 days. And so tonight I'm going to try Ms. Lala, which I've never been to. And
Oh yeah. Where
it's
is
like a
that?
thing. So I think it started in Sherman Oaks. It's like a Middle Eastern casual concept, but there's now one here in Hollywood. And so I'm going to go there, and I don't even know what's on the menu. Probably a falafel of some sort. You know, Middle
Uh-huh.
Eastern food is everywhere these days, in LA at least. So we're gonna see. I'm excited for it. Although I have to say, honestly, the dinner I made last night, Adam. Let me tell you something. I have to talk to you about this because I know Alison Roman is a little bit of a controversial figure in
Sure.
the sphere these days.
Yeah.
I actually don't know where you stand on Alison Roman.
I don't know.
Um,
I don't think Alison Roman knows where she stands on Alison Roman. I mean, I think I don't even know anymore. I mean, I think that whole Chrissy Teigen thing was like kind of like, because somebody is like, Alison's uncanceled now because Chrissy Teigen is canceled, and by the mathematics of it. I mean, it's so hard to keep track of who did what to whom. I think from one of my friends I spoke to, I think Alison had made a lot of enemies over the years. And
Yeah.
part of the reason that her downfall came so swiftly had less to do with what she said, which was wrong and not great that she said that, but also to do with the fact that people were happy to see her topple. And
yeah,
so,
that's usually what happens. So
yeah.
that being said, I think she does great work.
Her recipes are phenomenal.
I think,
I will agree with that.
yeah, I actually think that the whole flap that happened, I think what she did was she just said some stupid things and it was tone deaf. And she got called on it, deservedly so. And I actually thought that her apology was very good. I thought it was a thoughtful apology. So a lot of times when I post Alison Rowan stuff, people say, "Isn't she canceled?" I was like, I thought that she,
Yeah.
she took it head on. She got repercussions and she apologized. So my soul is good.
She
May
also
not be
became like
everyone's.
a symbol, I think, during that period. I mean, it was during the George Floyd protest. I mean, it
Yeah.
was like it all happened at this one
Yes.
moment.
Bad
And
time for Alison
yeah,
Roman.
and it was like she like I think with her blonde hair and her blue eye, there was just
And
something
she sort
about
of has
her.
this, yeah.
Yeah, I think she just took on a lot. But so what were you going to say though about your dinner?
So that being said, so I think she actually does great work, and I love both of her cookbooks. I really, really do. And she has, from her first cookbook, Dining In, she has a recipe for pork chop, and that's the recipe I used. And I'm telling you, Adam, this pork chop, it was like I was moaning. I was moaning at the table. It was just so good.
Where did you buy your pork chops? Because I feel like that makes a big difference if they have a lot of
does.
fat in them, if they're thick, if they're thin.
So the recipe actually calls for like one big pork chop that's like at least 1.5 inches thick.
Yes.
But I was at the farmer's market, living my aspirational dreams.
Yes,
the Hollywood Farmers Market. And there's like one of the stands there was pork purveyor. I forget their names. These two bros.
I've gone there. It's like peels
and pods or something like that.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's in the Hollywood Farmers Market, right?
Yes.
Yeah, they're great. Peels and pods. I love them.
Peels and pods. That's what we're gonna call them. But I'm looking for a big ass pork chop that's like an inch and a half. And they're like, oh yeah, bro, we got something for you. And they gave me like two ones that were like an inch thick. And I was like, do you have anything thicker? They're like, these are pretty thick, bro. And I was like, do you have anything thicker? Like, no, this is as thick as they get. So it's like, okay. I was like, I'm just gonna get these. I don't feel like sourcing a giant pork chop. This will be fine. So I got it from there. And what I did was to compensate. The reason why you want it thick, as you know, but in case people who are listening, is because you're gonna sear the hell out of both sides. So if it's too thin, you're gonna overcook it.
Yeah.
So what I did was I didn't take it out of the fridge until the last second. So that way I could sear it really hard and it wouldn't overcook the center. Hopefully.
That's smart. That's good. Yeah.
That was my innovation. That was my off the page innovation.
Love it.
And honestly, it was just, I did 5 minutes on each side and it was just like, it was like heaven.
But what else went in it? Like, was it coated in anything?
Yes, it was. I did a dry rub that I actually did the night before, which is you toast some fennel seeds and grind them up. And then it's like fennel seeds, brown sugar, salt, pepper.
I do coriander seeds with my fennel seeds in my rubs because I really love coriander. It has like an orange flavor to
Coriander is great. And you know, Melissa Clark, another one of your former guests.
Oh yes, of course.
She her coriander chicken from her dinner cookbook is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, she's an incredible like recipe writer. It's hard, like because I'm working on this Broadway cookbook, like, and I'm trying to come up with original recipes for all these things. But it's like, if I even glance at a Melissa Clark recipe, it's like I can't unthink about like how she made the thing better that I'm trying to make. Like if it's like a moussaka or something, it's like, so she'll be like, add like currants to it. And I'm like, oh my God, that sounds so good with lamb. And like, but it's like, now I can't use that because she said it. But what if I pretend that I didn't know that she's, it's so hard to look at her recipes.
Give her credit in the headline.
I'll give her
header.
Wait, so Ben, we're almost done. So I want to ask you, just because we're going to circle back now to Housewives, who do you think is the best cook of all the Housewives? Or whose house would you most want to go to for dinner? Maybe would be a better
this is a really good question because I've been asked it before and
sorry,
I've definitely
no
I'm just trying to remember what I've said, or actually I've not been asked it, but it's something I've talked about and I just felt like I just assumed I was asked, but then I was like, no, I often can just talk without being asked anything. I think Teresa Giudice is probably great, and I've heard she's a great chef. Like her cookbooks seem a little off. But
what do you mean they seem off?
Well, so my friend Amy Phillips, who hosts that was so my friend Amy Phillips, she hosts a show on Sirius XM on Radio Andy, and she just came out with a cookbook that's kind of, she and Chef Stuart O'Keefe, they came out with a cookbook that's all kind of like Bravo themed or whatever. And so I went onto her show, and what they had been doing leading up to this was that they were kind of road testing some recipes from Housewives cookbooks. And the recipe from Teresa's cookbook was like a little like they had to fix it. They had to make it good. It was not on its own. It was not
to make it nice.
They had to make it nice. Yeah. But I think actually Jennifer Aiden also can probably cook. She's from Jersey. I think.
Wait, I watched Jersey.
Jennifer, she's Turkish.
Yeah. She's good.
I think she can do something. I think no one on Beverly Hills, right? Like no
what
one
about
on,
Harry Hamlin? Harry Hamlin can cook.
Oh, he actually could. Yeah, I actually believe he can cook. He can throw down. But in terms of like the actual Housewives, I think like I'm not convinced Lisa Vanderpump. She tries. She's like, oh, it's my vegan minestrone pie. And you're like, I don't believe it, Lisa. I don't believe it.
Right. What about Kyle? She made a lasagna recently.
Kyle, out of nowhere, Kyle has declared that she always loves to cook. And so she burned salmon on like one of the first episodes of the season. And then she made this lasagna, which I would like to try, but she does not have the authority that I want. Shannon Bedour, she's pushing that salmon stuff with cream cheese. I'm not really convinced about anyone on Orange County being a good cook. Atlanta, I think Candy. I've been to Candy's restaurant, actually. I've been to Old Lady Gang. And
is that in Atlanta?
Yeah. And there were some really good things on, actually. I was surprised. I think Candy could probably, I think there are people on, I think some of the women on Atlanta.
What about
really throw down.
Pump? Do you ever go to those restaurants here in LA?
I've been to Sir Pump. I've been to every single one. I went to Villa Blanca, rest in peace. And it was fine. It was like a fine, like a a nice generic wealthy person's restaurant. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, it's
not
even
exciting.
a name. It sounds like a candle or something.
Yeah. Sir is not great with the food. It's like very strange. Like they try to make it seem like it's a very swanky upscale restaurant, and then it's like enchiladas with like a huge portion with like cabbage fluttering everywhere. Pump, I think Pump, the food is now starts to get better at Pump a little bit, but I had like one of the worst seafood salads I ever had in my life there, because it was like, you know, those tiny little shrimp that like come in a frozen bag. Like I don't even know why they exist and why people. So it was like this salad, and they just like dumped, like it had to be at least a cup of those tiny shrimps on it.
That sounds awful.
But here's the surprise: Tom Tom, which is from Tom and Tom, their food is actually really good.
Wait,
Like
who
they
are
have
Tom and Tom? Sorry, I don't know what that is.
Tom Sandoval and Tom Schwartz. They have a bar/restaurant in West Hollywood.
Which show are they from?
They're from Vanderpump Rules also.
I never watched Vanderpump.
Oh, you don't watch
Rules.
Vanderpump Rules. You watch
no.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Vanderpump Rules, you know, is in this space. So they're from that show, and they open up a restaurant that Lisa is also a partner in. And the food, honestly, the food is legitimately good.
I've heard that. Somebody told me they were going to Tom Tom. I didn't even know what that meant, but now I know.
Yeah, they have like a buffalo cauliflower that's great. They have jicama tacos that are really good. So I think if you're going to eat at any of the Lisa Vanderpump Empire restaurants, Tom Tom's the way to go.
Awesome. Well, that's a perfect place, I think, to end. But Ben, this was actually very deep and profound. I feel like I know you so much better now. I hope you feel good about it.
This was so fun. I miss you. We have to hang out. We haven't hung out in so long.
We'll come over. I'll serve you peaches, raspberries. We'll do an intervention. No, but thanks so much. And yeah, let's definitely hang out when we're back in the world.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, Ben, take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye.